That's what you get when you put a year's worth of work into 1 minute. And I would have loved to make this episode a before and after kind of thing, showing you where we started and where we are at right now, but I'm not ready for that. So until then, let's just continue with our business as usual. First up, I started a big project on my platform, where the biggest problem is, since it's not at all watertight from above, it's filling up with rainwater and I constantly have to pump out the water. Plus, being completely exposed to the elements at all times will not only make it rot from the inside, but also damage the wooden structure on top. So I went ahead and got a thick rubber foil to cover it up. This is actually a carport foil made of 1.2mm thick EPDM rubber, which is not only watertight but also resistant to UV light. First, I have to clear out all the junk that accumulated over the past few months inside and outside of the platform. This bolt right here goes through the hull, and its purpose is to be able to drain the boat when it's on land. I don't want it to get rusted and stuck, so I put some grease on it, hoping that in this way it can remain functional over the next months and years. Then I cover up the forward entrance to the inside. And then it's time to unfold the EPDM rubber foil. And it may not look like it here, but this thing is heavy. It's over 100 kilos for the entire part, so impossible to handle for a single person. The plan is to start all the way forward, covering first the areas where the anchor lines are located. I cut out holes for the mooring cleats on each side. Then I remove the anchor lines and put them on the big boat temporarily. Now we can put the rubber foil over the forward area and put the boat cleats through from below. So far, so good. I got these aluminum angle profiles to cover up the entire periphery of the platform. I'm first gonna prepare a couple of them to cover up the edge on the forward area where the anchor line will later rest on. After cutting some angle joints, I remove all the sharp edges. Next, I'm gonna drill some screw holes about every quarter along the total length of the angle profiles. I then countersink the holes so that the screw heads will be flush with the surface of the angle profile. Now these two are ready, so let's put them in place. Now I can put the main anchor line back on the platform. Here's my signature cloth hanger structure. And you can see that when under tension, the anchor line is completely suspended from the platform. Therefore, I don't think any damage will occur from wear and tear. Alright, next, let's prepare the remaining angle profiles which we need. And we need a total of 18, so this is gonna take a while. First, I cut a 45-degree angle for the profiles that sit at the corners. Then I mark the location for the screw holes. Once I drilled the holes of one profile, I can use that one as a template for the following ones. And every single screw hole needs to be countersunk. To finish up, I remove all the sharp edges to prevent the aluminum profile from damaging the rubber foil. I finish up with a hand sanding pad to get everything as smooth as possible. Right now, in this same fashion, let's finish up the remaining ones and then we are done with that. Next I go down below and clean up one small area, which I'm gonna use for storage. And then the time has come for that crappy old box to go. So that's where we are at with the platform right now. The next step is to spread out that rubber foil, which, you guessed it, will be shown in an upcoming episode. Today we are going to deal with my other problem child, my 1980 Bayliner Mutiny, who, as you remember, had a seized engine. My friend and I drove to a place about 1 hour outside of Berlin, where we found a replacement engine. While this one wasn't in a perfect condition either, the seller assured us that the pistons were moving freely and that it had a nice compression sound. So I bought it, hoping that we can make one working engine out of the two. So next we rented a trailer and went to pick up the Bayliner. Now I should mention that at this point neither my friend nor I had ever put a boat on a trailer before. Needless to say that we were about to face a few difficulties here and there. The first challenge was to get the trailer far enough into the water so that we can put the boat on top of it, ideally without drowning the pulling vehicle. Having no idea how exactly the boat is supposed to sit on the trailer eventually, we simply and rather naively just put the boat on the trailer, pulled it out, and saw what we got. And of course, the boat was not at all sitting properly on that trailer. So we put the boat back on the water, moved around some parts on the trailer, tried again, and failed again. As you can see, it's hardly sitting on those supports left and right here in the rear. Obviously, we couldn't drive like this, so we had to come back the next day and try a few more times. By now, somebody told us in passing that usually people would take a rope and let the trailer into the water, being attached to the rope instead of directly to the pulling vehicle. By this time, we also had a pretty good idea of how to mount those supports for the boat, so we attached them to the right places, put the boat on again, then we went back and forth a few times, and eventually, after many tries, we finally got it to sit properly on the trailer. So with the boat now securely put in place, let's get moving. Part of the deal for buying this motor was that we could replace it at the seller's location, who conveniently has an old-timer mechanics shop, and he also agreed to help us lifting the engines in and out from the boat. First, we have to detach all the wires and hoses from the old engine. The engine itself is attached by only a handful of bolts directly to the stern drive. The plan is to attach some tension straps to the motor block and then hoist it out with the seller's forklift. You can see here that these forks are quite short, which is gonna lead to some problems later on when trying to hoist the new engine back into the boat. But for now, getting the old engine out was not a problem, so let's get that out of the way. My friend got a quick lesson on how to operate this old forklift. So here's the old troublemaker. There is a huge hole which was hidden by the exhaust manifold. As I said before, the new engine is also not 100% intact. Most of all the exhaust manifold, which is completely rusted through. For the rest of the parts, we'll see as we go along. Now that we have two engines, there is a pretty good chance that we'll end up with a working engine at the end of this day. And I want to mention at this point that we initially planned 2 days to do this build, but when we first arrived on that day, at the seller's place, he told us that he was gonna leave on holiday that same evening and that he was not coming back for another 2 weeks, which meant that we had about 6 hours to prepare a Frankenstein of a motor, make sure we got all the right parts in the right place, hoist the new engine back into the boat and get off his lot. It goes without saying that this didn't leave much time for very detailed camera work, so I'm afraid that all I can show you is a very abbreviated version of the entire build. Once the engine was complete, we put it back on the forklift if we can get it to start. Luckily the owner wasn't far away, so he took over. And here is the finished engine, ready to be installed. Once again, note how very close the tension belt is to the end of that fork, which caused us much headache when putting back the engine. We used a big piece of wood to help stabilize it a little. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a complete nightmare to get this engine back where it belonged. But with a lot of force and some luck, we finally got it back in place. Since we didn't have time to reconnect all the hoses and wiring, let alone do any kind of testing on site, we put the boat back into the water and hoped for the best. Once arrived back at the platform, I put in a new impeller. After we connected back the electrical wiring and various hoses, it was time to try and start the new engine for the first time. Although the engine sounds pretty good from a mechanical point of view, there seems to be an issue with the electrical, as it just won't remain running once we let go of the ignition key's starter position. We tried everything we could think of, but it just wouldn't keep running once the starter motor stopped. So with that, I'm very sorry to say, we're gonna have to leave this for another day to finish. And for now, I'm signing out. Thank you all for watching and see you in the next video.